I will tell you just recently, microeconomist told me that if you think of fast tracks, you look at, of course, Asia for the economy, fast track, especially we know China and India. Slow track, very slow track. Okay, we're talking about the European Union. Slow track with all the issues, of course, with Greece and Portugal and Spain. They're definitely in the slow track. And then the middle track is really the U.S. But I found that fairly encouraging, and I'm sure we're going to hear about why a number of people feel there are good opportunities that are going on in the States right now. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker. His name is Rutger Neers, and Rutger joined Pure Energy in 2004 and is currently responsible for Pure Energy's drilling services in the USA completion services. So he is president of that area. Prior to joining Pure Energy, Rutger spent 10 years in commercial banking with a major international financial institution, the last 5 years of which were focused on commercial lending for the energy service industry. He earned his CFA, Chartered Financial Analysis designation in 2003, and best part of all is that he holds his Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Alberta. I don't mean it's the best university, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm definitely, but I think it's great that we have an Albertan that is doing such great work in the United States. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Rutger, and Rutger will speak. I noticed that it was, Jason said 50, I told him only 15 minutes because, again, we want to make this very interactive. So as long as he's keeping you on the edge of the seat, then you can go you can go up to the 25 if you want. Okay? Okay, thanks, Rutger.
Obviously, the U of A would be proud of that alumni pitch there. First off, I should just say to everybody, if there's anybody in the wireline and testing business in this room, U.S. is not a place you want to be. It's got terrible margins. Everything falls apart. The customers are terrible. There's no opportunity there whatsoever. But that's just my little, just kidding. Anyways, so as Lois said, we have been in the U.S. Can everybody hear me okay? We've been in the U.S. since 2004. We got in there in June of 2004, originally in our production testing business, which was really a new business for the area in the Jonah Field in Wyoming. And it was actually a new business, a relatively new industry. It was done in order to help our customers meet venting/flaring regulations, and it's bloomed quite well since then. So we've continued to expand since 2004 from that initial 4 units in Wyoming. We're now operating 40 test units, the bulk of which are in Colorado. We've got some in Wyoming. North Dakota is a growing field that we entered into last year in the Bakken side. And in October of last year, we got into Marcellus in Pennsylvania. We also have our cased hole wireline division, which is down there. We had 6 units in there up until the tail end of last year. We added another 2 units, and then we grew that with an acquisition in April, whereby we did an asset swap with one of our competitors where we took out their E-line units that were based in the U.S. and in exchange for another division that we carried in the company in Canada here. So again, this is just by way of background. Our concentration is really on the unconventional oil and gas plays, so we're trying to take advantage of that as much as possible. And despite my earlier disclaimer, really our USA entry has been very beneficial for our company. There's a lot of benefits to doing business in the U.S. It's a lot less seasonal. There are some seasonality issues in places like North Dakota where you might have some road bans and seasonal issues. But generally speaking, the work is much more predictable, and there's less competition. It's less heavily competitive in the what I'll call the mom and pop areas where you're basically competing with the bigger competitors. So that's always a nice place to be. So I don't really know if there's anything you guys want to ask in between or whatever. Just feel free to ask away. I was asked to just kind of get out some pertinent points as far as what things we've experienced since we've been down there since 2004. So I'll just go through them, and if there's any questions or anything, just feel free to ask. I always want to start off with people. Any successful service business always revolves around people. So this is also an area that requires quite a bit of expertise. The first point I have there is on the visas. We prefer to use the L1A, L1B type visas, but there's a myriad of different visas that you need or that you can utilize to gain people entry into the U.S. marketplace. Again, going back to our production testing example, we really needed to import a lot of people from Canada because it was just a real startup business down there, and there was no competition there to draw from or experience there to draw from. So we started with importing our people and then starting a grassroots type training program. So again, we use the L1A-B visas. One of the prerequisites, other than being able to cross the border and having a valid passport and that kind of thing, is you have to have 12 months of continuous employment with the company before you can go down there. So if you don't have that, then you're probably likely looking at some E-type visas or different types of visas, which are usually quite a bit more expensive and time-consuming. Second thing we found out very quickly down there is employment and employment laws and compensation structures are extremely different between the two countries. And they have very significant implications on both your cost side and in your HR side. So, you know, we had areas where up here typically due to competitive or industry practices, you'd pay via day rates. Down there, you can't pay via day rates. You have to pay on an hourly basis with a component for overtime. It can get quite a bit more complicated than up here, and basically makes your variable costs more of a fixed cost component. So be careful about that and make sure you get some good advice as far as how you want to set up your compensation structure if you're going to do that. And then the last thing on the people is benefit plans. Obviously, quite a bit more expensive down there than they are up here. And so there is a lot, I shouldn't say there's a lot more choice, but generally speaking, the different plans are quite a bit more expensive. So the people on the cost side, we find there's probably a 5 to 10% increase over similar costs here in Canada. So. Next, to service companies, not very much without people, and secondly, equipment. I don't have a lot of slides here because it's just such a, it's very, very specialized according to what business you're in. There's a couple things that I did want to touch on though. The DOT/regulatory matters, and I'll cover this some more on a slide I have for tax. You really have to understand the different laws between federal versus state versus county, and that applies in a number of different jurisdictions. So make sure that you have very good advice there. You're probably going to make mistakes, but the more you can cover yourself off, the better it is.